sure you find that people don't, I mean, a lot of people do, but there are still a lot of people out there that do not understand that their own health can be tied to time, to places in their soul.
It is absolutely tied to it.
Yes. Yes, and they don't understand it. Yeah, and they don't always understand that. But the moment you unblock it, often a lot of their health issues go away, or can, or they get better.
Well,
depends on
the health crisis is usually a cry out from the soul to pay attention to the soul, because the soul is constantly with you, and that's part of the intuition. But it's also bringing people to you to help you grow, even though the ego carries the anger and the resentment, and it's about helping them clean all of that up. And I usually ask the question, so what happened? Did you grow any from this? Did you experience anything anything different? And of course, they'll put it together. And it's a way of looking at that might have been your greatest spiritual gift, the person that you think you hate the most.
Well,
is oftentimes, it's a paradigm shift in consciousness, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Because most people are asleep. They're spiritually asleep.
Yes, I agree.
And it's about connecting the soul's ego to the personality's ego, because your soulality has its own ego, and that's where the soul's ego is encouragement, gratitude, and observance, and the personality ego is envy, gratification, and obsession. So it depends on which master you're going to serve.
Right.
If you're going to serve your higher good, you're going to go for the highest good, for what's in your best, highest good. And, of course, it takes a while for people to get that wrapped around their brain.
Well, I think the first step is just recognizing that they don't – it's just even seeing somebody like you to recognize that there's far more than just their physical body, and that they're getting a message, and it's time to take it to another level.
Exactly, or find out, why am I sick?
Yes,
when there's no reason for them to be sick, so to speak. But it's actually, that's a cleansing in a way. It's being physical illness as a detox.
Yeah, in a strange way. I agree with you.
In a very strange way. Because some people do come in with certain illness to teach other people about things.
Yes, and it can become a gift, but it takes a long time to see it from that perspective. So.
Oh, absolutely, because we're human after all.
Absolutely. Nobody thinks they would wish it, right? And it's not a conscious wish. Absolutely not.
Oh no.
No one should ever. No. I know exactly what you're saying. So, how did you learn? How did you? I understand you were sort of natural and that you enjoy people, but how did it get to where you know what you know and teach it and work with it? Is there a story behind that?
Well, I mean, I was born with all these gifts, and I was born into a very challenging life. But I came in with no fear. So it was a very natural thing for me to know whose issue it was and whose issue it wasn't. And then through the years, I was always very curious, and I began to look into all the alternatives, the Reiki, the rebirthing, the clairvoyance. No, I was always clairvoyant, and I could see things. And then one time, in the 80s, I had met a man who was a master healer, and that was part of my soul contract with him. He never told me how to do anything, but he challenged me and told me I was absolutely afraid of my energy, and I told him he was absolutely right. And what I discovered was I misused the energy in many lifetimes and had a wonderful time doing it. So I came into this lifetime with the decision not to misuse it. So of course I wouldn't use it until I learned exactly how to use it.
Makes sense.
And when I started using it for a long period of time, and then I was teaching some classes on the 7 rays of the soul, and I always had these two. I call them Mr. Blisses because they're total bliss. They've never been on the earth, and 2 would stand beside each side of me. And when I went in to do a meditation before the class, they were sitting down, and I almost became hysterical. And I said to my girlfriend, "They're sitting down. What am I going to do?" And she said, "Ask them." And of course, they came back and said, "We were there to block your energy when you were working with someone because the energy was so strong, I hadn't controlled it. It was like hitting somebody with a 2x4.
Yeah.
So And then I just laughed and understood exactly what they were talking about. And then it became very clear to me to do the readings, do the healing, and my ego wasn't involved. I wasn't out to impress. I was just about delivering the truth. And then I realized, I kept asking, okay, so what's my mission? What am I exactly focused on? I got a very clear, the soul. It's all about the soul because everything is tied to your soul.
I agree with you.
In the soul. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think most people do, even those that may not technically believe in a God. I think most of them would agree whether they call it a soul or not, that there is some part of them that they don't necessarily understand. And I don't think most people argue about that. I think most people understand. I don't think they necessarily all understand what their soul really is, which is a whole big discussion by itself. But I think
the soul, I can give you a little brief description of what I believe it to be. See, your soul, when you leave spirit, you're given the gift of free will and creation and the gift of soul. And the soul is the part that records everything of your total existence from the time of conception of the soul until you go back and ascend. It has all your records right there.
Is that similar to Akashic records, or is that different?
It could be. I mean, I don't really go into them, or if I do, I'm not aware of it. I just look at the soul's history.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because the soul has no judgment whatsoever. It has no gender. It just loves. And it's patient because it's going to win out in the end anyway.
Well, and you do agree soul is out of time. Soul is not part of time.
No, anything we do here is not part of what we do on a higher level because there is no time in a higher level.
Yes, exactly.
There's just the energy and there's just the love and there's the guidance if we're open to it.
So
and I've always had...
Go ahead.
No, I've always, from the time I was very little, I always knew that whatever... It's kind of like it has to be for my higher good because if I'm not happy, God is not going to be happy, and we're going to have a problem. So, that's always been my philosophy. It still is my philosophy.
Yeah, it's got to be real.
Yes, and of course, I've practically gotten everything I want in terms of spiritual. Or when I was really young, I was in an orphanage, and we had to leave at 16. And I wanted to go to this mansion to work because one of my friends was there, and I never mentioned it to anybody, but I ended up in the mansion because I just said, God, you better take care of this because I'm not going to be happy anywhere else. And, of course, I was exposed to a whole different world there at a very young age, and it was wonderful, and I totally believed that's where I was supposed to be, and that's where I ended up.
Well, you intended it, and it came to fruition. It sounds like what you're saying, right?
Everything is intention.
Yes, and putting your whole part into that. So I want to give you enough time to talk about the 5 realities and kind of what we promoted for the show, but I just also want to let listeners know what do you do in a session, and at the end, obviously, and it'll be in the blog, and you can give all that contact information, but tell me what a typical session would be for, and I know I do my own work and it changes, everybody's different, but kind of what it would be like if they came to see you and a reading and how you work and interface with them.
Okay, usually what happens is when they set up an appointment, and oftentimes it's through the internet because I do better with that, and what I have them, I write back the instructions and I have them make a list of questions. And only because if they have questions they want answers to, they have to be responsible for that.
That's good.
Because I won't invade anybody's privacy without their permission. So usually they come with a list of questions, and they all get answered because they're all interrelated. And when they come, I start actually wherever I'm supposed to. Sometimes a whole bunch of people, spirits I should say, come in with them, like their parents might be there if they've passed over. And I let them know that they're there, and then they sometimes will want to communicate with them or do some healing work, and we do that. And then we go through answering their questions, and if they're not aware of it, then oftentimes what happens is a child will appear right beside them, and I'll say, well, we have a 7-year-old here, so what absolute decision did you make when you were 7? And they will know. They'll know what decision they made. And whatever problems then they're having in life, I just say, well, look at it this way. You shut down at 7 years old. You're now trying to navigate an adult world from the emotions of a 7-year-old. and you wonder why you're having problems. And we go about, I teach them how to, or give them the instructions how to heal the 7-year-old and let her grow up, so that they can integrate that part of themselves.
Right.
And they do.
Absolutely.
So it kind of goes like that.
So often, I mean, you do, as a spiritual medium, you can also work with, as you just said, a family member that may be crossed over and may come through. So you can do a reading for them on their behalf, or as well, anything that's resonating for them through time. Maybe a 7-year-old. I've even had experiences where it's not even in this timeline. It's another timeline, and it bleeds through. And the issue is so strong that either the child or the spirit will come through, or it can be, as you say, a part of them that's still stuck. Right. Okay.
Or they're wondering why they're having such a terrible time in life. Yeah. And that's what I look at. Oftentimes it's either from a past life or it's from the present life. And oftentimes it's all connected anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't separate readings. I just do the reading, whatever the person needs at that time. And oftentimes it's a mixture of everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you're working with them from a holistic approach, and you've got to give them what they need. Are your sessions typically about an hour? Do they sometimes go over? Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes they go over because I try not to limit it. It can go anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, and they can tape it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, you're kind of typical, but I always like people to know, because for anybody that's new to this or they're considering it, I think it helps them to know, well, what could I expect? I've had people come to me that, they wanted to do it, and they finally came because someone referred them, and, you're on the radio, and we want to make sure people know that, it's safe and you're going to get respected and nothing's being done without permission. So,
absolutely.
You follow the rules I do, and I just want to make sure that was clearly identified for people.
Right. When something comes up and I feel they're not ready for it, I just ask their permission, can I tell you? And they'll say yes, and then I'll do it very gently, because people get very scared. And it definitely has to be in a safe environment. And oftentimes people will come and they have these huge blocks, and I'll just say, you have blocks all around. You need to give permission to have them down if we want to continue. And they do. Yep. And it's amazing how it works.
Oh, no, it can be very powerful. And once people kind of have an experience along these lines, it opens them for far more deeper work. But again, since we're all about education and empowerment, for you and I, it's kind of basic language. But there was a point in my life that it wasn't. It was new to me, and I just had that perspective of what it's like for people that are seeking it, and it's new. And like you said, they do get afraid, and they're like, they may have a belief system, but they're trying to step outside of it to broaden it. And it's just important that they know that most people that do this kind of work have a lot of integrity, and they're going to be really, really careful, because it's nothing to be messed with. The universe doesn't like that. So most people don't know that. So I just wanted to clarify. Okay, now we could go a dozen different directions. You've got a fascinating topic, the 5 realities, and I have sort of an overview. But I really want you to take this where you want to go with it. Whether, you can think of this as if it's a classroom or you're teaching those guests that are logged in. But explain to us first what the 5 realities are, and then, because it's a tagline, the 5 realities, the healing journey of the soul. So we do know now what you mean by a soul historian, that it's really you're looking at their blueprint, is how I put it. And by looking at that, you're looking for blockages or whatever intuitively you're being guided to by the divine and by their specific set of conditions. And I'm assuming that this came out of your work, and so I kind of dive in and talk about how you came up with this particular topic and what the 5 realities mean and what they are.
Okay, well, I'll go over them and then I'll explain them. And the first, your spiritual essence. Okay, that's you're either masculine or feminine. And then you have your physicality, the world that you live in. And then you have your personality, which is your personal reality in the world that you are in, what you make of it. And then you have your soulality, which, of course, is all the history in your soul that you've carried from lifetime to lifetime. And then you have your spirituality, which is not religion. Okay? Spirituality teaches acceptance of ourselves and others, as where religion is a belief system that teaches how different we are and shows us how intolerant we are of those that are not of the same belief systems.
You got to say that again, because I think that's powerful. So explain this, because I agree with you.
Okay, and I'll say it slower.
Yeah.
Spirituality
really
is not religion. Spirituality is the God-Goddess energy that teaches acceptance of self and others. Religion is a belief system that teaches how different we are and shows us how intolerant we are of those that are not the same belief systems we were raised in. Okay?
Excellent.
And I think that religion is a wonderful base to have, and then you grow from that. You take what you need from it, and then you grow from there, because when you go into the spiritual part, you're far more tolerant and far more accepting of yourself and others. Yes. And it brings in a lot more passion. It brings in a lot more peace. And, it's kind of like you can't do judgment and passion or compassion at the same time. You just can't do. So you do either one or the other. So I teach people, remember, if you're judging, you're not being compassionate. So that's something to work on. But on the confusing part with the communications for people, your spiritual essence, you either come in as a masculine essence or a feminine essence. It has nothing to do with gender. But the masculine essence processes everything through their mental body, and the feminine essence processes everything through their emotional body. So now if you have two people talking, and one is trying to explain their feelings to a mental essence, the mental essence doesn't have a clue what you're talking about. Yeah. Because they're all very logical and very linear and very factual, and the other person is going, but that's not how I feel, but I don't want you to feel, I want you to think. So if they understand that about each other, then they find a new way of talking to each other. Mm-hmm. It's finding out if they are, which one they are. Usually I can tell people when I'm talking to them, or I don't even have to talk to them, if they are a feminine or a mental. I mean, I could tell you which essence you are if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you're a feminine essence.
Yes.
Okay. And
I'm a whole thinker, yes.
Huh?
Yeah, I think like a black hole. Everything is all there. And I don't need to have a doorway that I got to pick from, well, today I'll talk about this subject. Or I can do that. I can multitask into any of them. That's how I see a feminine. Yep.
Well, our job is actually to be able to, if we come in as, I'm a very strong mental essence, but I have developed the feminine side, so the key is to bring it all into balance.
Yes.
And that way you can
really
switch
is true.
Yes, and you can switch whichever way, whatever the situation calls for. You can bring in the creativity, the compassion, the fun, and do all of that. And if you have to be analytic, you can be that, and it's a mixture of both, and then it's very well balanced.
And a lot of people say that I just need to be balanced, but I don't think they often know what that means. Often you have to, when I was much younger, I was far more dominant in the mental body, but I had to develop it like you did. And it can be done. It's just a matter of understanding it. And I think that's a leap that's initially difficult for people, because our physical world is dominated by the mental body. You know that.
Absolutely.
And I think,
And our physical world involves all our senses, our touch, our taste, sight, sound, smell, and our environment. And oftentimes we don't even use all of those.
Nope.
And oftentimes we don't listen to our intuition. In hindsight, we know it was right. But the two things that never lie to you is your heart and your intuition. They just do not. They don't know how.
Nope.
Because they're part of your spiritual body, and they're there for the highest good. So if we learn to listen more to them, it takes courage to follow either one.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, because the personality is afraid of the rejection and, a lot of other things. And the things that they're going to die if they say no, and of course they're not going to die. They just might change friends.
Well, it is a type of death, but it's not a death that, it's going to take their life. But you're right, it could change their culture, their society, because as they grow and evolve, it will simply become different. But in the end, it's a much broader and richer life. It's just
if you can get them onto that side, exactly, they become stronger, and then they can start making. You can either live life by choice or by chance, and then they can start using their own free will. One of the concepts that took me a while to wrap around my brain was that nothing can happen to you without your permission.
Yes. And
you have to be at a certain level of growth to really understand what that is. And it's very, very, very powerful. It's very empowering when somebody is able to stand in their own power and not worry about what everybody else thinks.
Yes,
I mean, that would be ideal.
It's ideal. And I completely understand what you're saying, but I know most people, a lot of people, even those that are genuine seekers, and there's so many ways. There's no one way to get to where you need to get spiritually. There's many ways, but this concept is probably the hardest. Like the illness can be a gift, or that basically you gave your permission, or this wouldn't be happening. It's really hard when a person is in, and I don't mean to call them victims, but it is somewhat a victim consciousness to say, that life happens to me, rather than embracing what you're saying. And you and I are on the same page, right on about this. But again, I've been there, and I'm sure you were. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing the work you've done. As you say, most people that do this kind of work have had their own challenges, and that's why they do it, because they've lived it and experienced it, and now it's time to pass it on.
Exactly, and it's my whole mission is that when I'm talking to them and the truth hits them, and it's such a release, and they just feel it changes the energy in their body.
Yeah.
And with that understanding, they have more hope. They know that they're going to be happier, and they come back for a tune-up.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and they do, because everybody has come to me so far. All has been word of mouth. And I've been doing it for a long, long time, and I love doing it because that's my passion. That really is my passion. And, of course, I work in the mental health field. I work with the chronically mentally ill, and I love doing that, too. And I worked for 10 years with people living with addiction and HIV and AIDS, and I absolutely loved that because they were my greatest teachers.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're living it raw, and they are learning once they can see that. They really
absolutely
are. They're great teachers.
It was a great experience for me because they taught me how to work with people who might be very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's and then people come in, depending on what essence they are, and you have your family culture, your ethnic culture, you have your society's culture, and they're living in a physical world. And most people are trying to survive in it, especially when you're a child, because you're totally powerless in your physical world. And lucky if you have nutrient parents, but a lot of people don't. And of course, part of when I work with people, we talk about the parents, not at all in any way of a judgment. It's about telling them, asking them why they picked them, for what lessons that they have to learn. Because we do pick our parents.
No, I agree with you.
Yes, and sometimes, the parents are there to force us to grow, no matter what circumstance it is. If they have a strong ego, they're able to get over that.
Yeah, and oftentimes that's a real hard one for people. Yeah, it's a hard one.
It's a hard one because what happens with people in front of me, I'm looking at wounded souls.
Yes.
And with a lot of anger and a lot of post-traumatic stress and a lot of different things. But most of them are very bright, and at that point you just give them small steps that they need to practice.
That's right.
Practical application.
Very, very simple, one day at a time, and moving carefully through it. Yeah, but it can be done.
And one thing at a time.
Because they're overwhelmed by so much. That's what PTSD is, just an overload of the system. It's like an autistic child who's got too much data coming in. They've got too much time coming in, and it shuts them down until they can sort through it. Yeah.
Well, that's what I have done with people privately is I've done the rebirthing with people that had post-traumatic stress.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like a guided meditation with the rebirthing. The rebirthing is a circular breath. And what it does, it releases it starts at your most previous, your most experience, and then it goes down deeper and deeper. And what it does is it releases the memories from the cells in your body.
Mm.
Okay. Now, for instance, I worked with a woman when she was maybe around 10 or 11. She was gang raped by a bunch of kids, and everyone thought she was crazy, and she wasn't. And at the time, I was working in family violence, and the program director asked me to talk to her. And as she trusted me, I introduced this concept. And she came for 6 sessions of the rebirthing. And what I did was when she was ready, because I always have the client in control. They can stop anytime they want with anything that I'm doing. And I brought her in and lead her to a guided meditation because I can see where she's going.
Yeah.
And as the adult, she was able to go into the barn, rescue the child, bring the child out to me, and I said to her, now you can go back into the barn and do whatever you want to do. You do not have to tell me because this is your healing. The intention is for your healing. You're not really going to hurt anybody, but you can do anything you want. She never told me what she did, but she'd been in an abusive marriage for 25 years, and probably within 6 months she left the marriage.
Wow.
And she went back in and claimed her power.
Yep. She went and found herself. Yep.
She went and rescued the child and stood in her own power and was not going to put up with any more abuse.
Yep.
It's very powerful stuff when somebody is willing to do it. And it's very scary for someone to do it.
Initially, I think, I've done this work myself, and I think initially, yes. But once you've done it and you really see how powerful it is and feel it, and you see the results that it will have in the body because the body will start functioning and release, and it's teaching you, then you become less, not saying it's ever easy, but it becomes less, you become less afraid because you see the power of the results of it. And it is a life changer, But it can be difficult to get through that initially. But that's powerful. I'm familiar with a similar concept, but the way you're talking about it is a little different, which is, again, there are so many techniques which people don't realize, and they're all good. It's just figuring out what works for you. Everybody is different.
And what works for the other person. I think
that's
that
right.
I'm totally guided when I'm doing the work. So I totally have faith in it. I have trust in it. They come in and surround me with the energy and with the love and the compassion. The person can feel it. And if, like I said, I tell them you can start this any time you want. And they don't have to share anything with me if they don't want to, of what their experiences is.
Right. It's all in their hands.
It's absolutely, because that's part of their power.
Right.
That's part of them standing in their own power.
Yeah. And most people live very disempowered today. We live in a complicated world. Yeah.
It's a complicated world full of fears.
Yeah,
but
lots of them.
And their personalities, I'm totally convinced that if you ever see a born baby with a frown on their face, it's oftentimes that's just part of their personality. Yes. Some babies come in and they're happy and they're, no matter what happens around them, they're happy and they're outgoing. Some come in and they're fussy and they don't want to eat and they don't want this and they don't want that. They bring it all with them, and that's their personality. And everybody is different.
From the moment they're born, they are. You're absolutely right.
Exactly. And it's also their personal reality because it reflects how they see themselves in the world, how they live their lives, and it refers to patterns of thoughts, feelings, self-perception, values, and attitudes. And it's really, it predicts their reactions or responses to people and whatever stress, whatever way they come. And what happens is oftentimes their unique gifts get buried in all of that. Because unfortunately, a lot of children that come in, all their energy goes into surviving.
Yeah, it's really true. And, once they realize things are beginning to wake up, in my own experience, I had a lot of different abilities, but as I began to wake up, one of the things that came out was I was an artist. I had never painted in my life, taken a class, and as I did this work in a variety of ways, some of which you're describing, I paint and I could do things. This is really exciting for people when they discover these. If they had been born into a family that was loving and all that, perhaps they would have been natural and they would have been whatever. But when it's, as you say, if all they're doing is surviving, and that's all most people do if they're under this kind of duress, all of the abilities and creativity are locked. And you have to, one of the great things about your work, this kind of work, is that's like a plus. You find these hidden talents and abilities that you didn't even know were there, and this is the creative part of that process. In the work I do, it's always what I bring in. Yeah, I'm sure you do encourage them to find a way to express it. I find it often just comes out of them. They don't even know how or why. It just does. Well, it's a natural thing. There was one lady I told you was in France, and she spoke French, and she told me she teaches French in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, different things I'll bring up, and they'll have something that ties into it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a natural part that was able to get through, which is really, really good. And if they can put, it's kind of like learning to live in the world with your personality, your physicality, knowing what essence you are, and then, of course, that ties all into your soulality because it's all coming from there to begin with.
Now, this is that you're using those phrases are all part of the 5 realities. Because you talk about the spiritual essence, which you've gone over, your physicality, which you have gone over, your personality, which we were really going through, then your soulality and your spirituality. Why don't you tie those 2 together, and then I think we've sort of have been talking about it, but maybe tie it together for people, how that works through the healing.
Well, your relationship with your soul, I mean, that's where your expression of feeling all the joy and the sadness, the sorrow, the despair, the passion, and the love to the depths of your being. And we have all kinds of soul things in the world. We have soul music, soul dancing, soul food, I should say. And we're always searching for soul mates, and we're selling our soul to the devil, and we're buying our soul back from the devil, and we're healing our souls and searching again, and we still don't have a clue what all that means.
It's really
But
true.
actually, in all of that, when you think about it, it's all a big desire to know our soul.
Yeah.
And our soul is our inner consciousness.
Yes.
And we have to become aware of its existence because it holds no judgment to how you experience all of your emotions. It only wants you to heal and balance them. And that's where it comes into a constant power struggle between your soul's ego and your personality ego. Because the personality is very demanding and the soul is very patient. Yes. And, of course, people sometimes have to go through what their personality ego demands to discover that's not what they were looking for at all. So, and of course our soul's purpose, everybody wants to know what their purpose is, and of course it really is to experience our true self through our soul essence and to be conscious of it and to evolve into all that we are. And it speaks to us through the whispers. Your soul speaks to you. It whispers when you're in your joy, but it screams at you when you're in your despair.
Yes, it does.
And sometimes we ignore it because our ego wants what it wants when it wants it, regardless if it's good or bad for us. So, and it's about taking inventory probably on what's serving your higher good. Is it getting what you want? And when you know that your soul is speaking to you, it lets you know that you are loved and accepts you the way you are, but not enough to leave you that way. But it will provide.
Good. Well,
but it will provide you with the opportunity to change your patterns that no longer serve your higher good. Because if we don't change the patterns, we just repeat them.
Over and over and over, which you can
over
see
and over
every
and
day.
over. And
a lot of famous people do that in public sight. They're repeating those patterns and don't even know why. I think
absolutely. And the true essence of our soul is the base of all our knowledge and awareness. And our self-knowledge comes from our experiences and is the foundation of the certainty of who we are. And being aware of our souls tells us it tells us what we're capable of becoming. Yes. So when we do that, because it is the spiritual blueprint when we set out for our earthly journey, and when your belief system is no longer bringing peace to your mind or compassion to your heart, it's time to wake up and do your soul's bidding. That's my philosophy. And
I agree.
What happens is the integration of all of this is how we process the information, how we live in the world, how we deal with our personalities. It's like the other day I was teaching a class and I was telling people that we have to love what we hate about ourselves and love what we love about ourselves. And that was like a shock to their system.
Yeah.
Why would we have to love what we hate? Well, for example, if I'm tired, I'm grumpy. If I'm hungry, if I'm grumpy. If I'm totally focused, I don't want anybody interrupting me because I'm going to take her head off. But, they're parts of who I am, and I love those parts, and I try to modify them and be very aware of them. But yet, there's still parts of me that I would like to change, and I work at it. It doesn't matter. If I'm totally focused and I'm interrupted, I'm going to take her head off, and not to personalize it.
Exactly. It's really true.
It's just knowing who you are and how, if you respond to something or react to something. That's the difference between a masculine essence oftentimes will respond, as where a feminine essence will oftentimes react.
Yes, but even so, there's a lot of levels to that. They may be reacting,
absolutely.
but still not. Yeah, not always understanding why they're reacting. It can still be reacting to the male energy of, well, you never listened to me. Well,
yeah, but that's the emotional component. That's the key.
Right.
The feminine essence is emotional component or emotional investment.
That's right. Still, the key is to get to the soul level so that there's an understanding of why you do what you do. I mean, you've said it very eloquently, and I agree. So all of this, and I don't want to shortchange you on explaining it, but is the journey, as you put it, of healing the soul, so that the whole point is to be here and to make life less painful.
Exactly.
Would you agree? Yeah.
To make it less painful, I coach people to look at what they can control, because I explain control is such an illusion to begin with. We really are not in control. But to see what is there anything you can do about the issue right now? No. Then let it go.
Yeah.
And have them sit with the problem until the answer comes to them, because every problem has a built-in answer. I know that just from experience. And, of course, they want an answer right now, but if people would just put the problem out there, be patient, have faith, the answer will come. It always comes. It may not be the answer they want, but it'll be the answer they need.
Yeah, and always in the right time, even though it's frustrating because you don't always see what the divine is until, or your soul, how you wish to put it, isn't allowing you to see. So it really requires living life in the present, not in the future, not in the past, right now.
Right, in the present.
That's right. There is no other place to live, otherwise you're living in anxiety. You're either stuck in the future or stuck in the past. And people, that concept, Eckhart Tolle talks about this very, very well, eloquently in his book, The Power of Now. And I know people a lot of clients that just cannot understand what that means. They don't recognize, and often they'll be talking and then I'll point out, you're in the future. And then they realize it. They're horribleizing something because they're projecting themselves. And they don't really realize how much we are in our own heads until we begin to get into, as you put it, the soul, the heart, and live that way. And it does require effort. But once you do it, it takes that edge of constant anxiety that most people, I think, live in.
Well, the thing with the anxiety, what I have people do, if it's not clinical anxiety, if it's your everyday anxiety, I have people, first I ask them where it's in their body, and they tell me. Then I say, close your eyes, ask the anxiety what it's trying to tell you. Most anxiety of this type comes from people not making decisions.
Yes.
Okay? And because they don't know if it's the right decision, or because it'll change their life, decision can change their life, and it's a constant anxiety. So when I get them to focus on it, it begins to bubble up a little bit. And then they have a choice. They can make whatever. It's kind of like there's nothing wrong with staying in a bad relationship. If you know you're in it, you're able to accept it, and it's your decision. Now, if you're not happy in it, what do you want to do about it? And that's where the anxiety comes from.
Right.
Because they might be carrying the fear of abandonment.
Right, or any other number of fears that, my gosh, what if, I might make the wrong choice. Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, there are really only four basics, and that's failure and expression and rejection and abandonment. I did them in the wrong order, but I do workshops on that too.
Well, let's say those again. Say those again slower for the
fear
audience.
Of failure, fear of abandonment, fear of expression, and fear of rejection. They're the four core fears that really mess people up in their lives.
Yep. Very well put.
Okay. And some have all four, some has a primary, some have one or two, some are much less because they've worked on them, but they're the four that can bring them in with them or develop them as they're growing in this, from childhood.
Right.
Yeah. And the anxiety then comes because the inability to make a decision or the fear to make one because of the consequences of the decision, which brings up the fears.
Right.
And that's all part of their physical world, their spiritual world, their soulality, their personality, their masculine or feminine essence. It sort of all ties in together.
Oh, absolutely. It's a cycle. It's exactly, it's circular. Yeah. You can jump in and off at any point if if you can get off the merry-go-round and recognize that, which of course is what dealing with spirituality is about, is to get off the merry-go-round that we're born into and have to recognize, to wake up to, and change that. Yeah,
exactly.
That's very well
And humor always helps.
Oh, yeah. You know, though, I found I married somebody who's extremely funny. I'm kind of a dry wit. Most people would call me very serious and intense. I have a good sense of humor, but it's just sort of subdued. Whereas he's the kind, he's charming and funny. I mean, I was attracted to that because he brings that levity that I just couldn't find early in my life.
Exactly.
People underestimate, and there's lots of books on this, lots of writing on it, but it really is huge. Humor, being able to laugh at yourself, and often when people are so traumatized and so much pain, you know, that's the last thing they want to do. The life is dark, and there's no joy. People don't even know what joy means.
Well, if there's no gratitude, there's no joy.
Right, and it's hard to be grateful when you've been abused or had a horrible, existence. Yeah, all these things we're talking about, for people on that side of that equation, think, oh, are you crazy? How could you feel that way? But what they don't recognize is, again, it's a process step by step, and it's courage to face it and move forward.
Absolutely. When I have somebody, because I did family violence as well, when I have somebody that, domestic violence, and somebody's a victim of it, and they're feeling so bad, and I ask them what's their strengths, and they tell me they don't have any. And I say, you're sitting in front of me. That's a strength there.
That's exactly right.
You know?
Any step.
Yes, is a strength. Or just in simple stuff, when somebody is talking to me about some problem, and I would just look at them and say, why do you do that to yourself? And that catches them by surprise. Because now they have to think, why do they allow that? I'm not talking about domestic violence, a whole different dynamic altogether. But I'm talking about just everyday problems.
Right.
Why would somebody do certain things to themselves?
Right. You're putting a spotlight on it for them. You're really showing and reflecting it back. Yeah. Yes. Anybody who shows up for a spiritual session is brave.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, because they're on their journey.
That's right.
And everybody is on a different journey.
That's right. But I don't care what level it is, spiritual work is not for sissies. It does take effort, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's courageous to dig deeper. It is.
Oh,
anybody, I don't care what level. Yeah.
Exactly. It does. It takes a lot of courage because it changes one's life.
Yeah, changes everything.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It changes one's life, but it's definitely well worth doing the work. That's
absolutely.
All I can say is that if you want to be happy, then you have to make a conscious choice in cleaning up the energy in your life. You have to make a conscious choice about what decisions you want to make. And my thing is, I'll respect whatever decision anybody makes if you're happy in it.
Yeah. If you're not happy in it, then there's a whole different ballgame. And that's usually when they'll come back.
And what a person has to do, if they're not happy in it, then they have to stop complaining about it to a degree.
Yes, that's the key to it, yes. Which we know is always a process. And I think even the complaining is sort of their, if it's especially, the chronic kind, it's really their attempts to do something about it. They're stuck.
Well, I think it's their attempts for attention.
Oh, absolutely. I
because
agree.
There's such a lack of love in their lives. And I will give time to that, but I won't give all my energies to it.
No, because you can get weighed down by that. Right. I completely understand. So we have about, about 10 minutes, 8 minutes. Let's tell me where you want to go, and I want to make sure you give websites and phone numbers and all of that stuff, which I'll, of course, put in the blog. So in the time we have left, we've kind of talked about what all those 5 realities are, and I will profile those in the blog so listeners can go back, read them, besides listening to it, and obviously get a hold of Omena for more and for sessions. But from there, you talk about the healing of the soul, which, again, I think we've really talked about that through this whole thing. But with the time we have left, besides giving your contact and all that, where do you want to take this to end it today?
What
do you want
to
leave for the What do you want to leave for the listeners?
I hope that they go to my website, but also that that they begin to work on finding out what essence they are to begin with, because that's, if they're all in the feeling world and the passion and the creativity and all of that, there probably are feminine essence, or to recognize that they're a masculine essence and how they relate to the world in that. And if it's bringing any kind of trouble into their lives, that's what they have to look at. It's kind of like taking...
I'm sorry, female, a woman can be a male essence?
Absolutely.
Just to clarify it.
It has nothing to do with gender, because it's your spiritual essence, so it has absolutely nothing to do with gender. It's how you process information.
Got it. Okay.
And that's very, very, I think that's key to discovering what essence you are. And then everything else will follow. The other thing is, if people don't have gratitude in their life, they're never going to know joy. If they're not humble, they're going to be humiliated. If they don't have abundance, even if they have millions of dollars, they have poverty of the soul. And I could go on forever with this, but I won't. But they're just little things that for people to look at.
Yeah, well, they're powerful. If you think about just the one, if you don't have gratitude, you won't have joy. Those are potent. Yeah.
Because gratitude, when you open the door to gratitude, it brings in so much more. Just being grateful, and religion doesn't have to be involved in that at all. Just being grateful because the light turned green at the time you wanted to turn green, or you barely missed something and you go, oh, thank God. Everybody thanks God. Either blames him or thanks him. But I don't hear enough about saying how grateful they are.
9 times out of 10, they're blaming.
Yes,
blaming
I know.
God. I find that fascinating, that God gets the blame rather than whatever you want to call the negative side of it.
We don't have to be responsible. But the promise of free will. Nobody interferes with your free will. I won't even interfere with your free will.
True.
Yeah, because if you can go the high road or the low road or the hard road, whichever road you need to go to learn whatever you need to learn, and it's going to take as long as it's going to take, or you pay attention and you begin to take a look at, what do I need to change in my life? It's kind of like if you don't like somebody, there's nothing you can do about it. You can only change your attitude towards that person.
That's right.
It's
really true.
So, yeah.
You got a lot of good one-liners.
Well, that's good. Short and simple.
Short and simple. Okay, so where do they go? What's your website?
Oh, they can go to Omena, OMENA 777.com.
Okay.
My email is omena777@att.net.
Okay.
If they go to the website, they'll find all the other connections there.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
And Omena is on Facebook. And that's an inspirational, there's inspirations there they can read every day.
Great.
Yeah. Just little sayings about life, spirituality, funny stuff.
Good.
Philosophical stuff. And they're just little pick-me-ups.
Always good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody that is interested in working with Omena, obviously this is great information, and take it to the next level. If you're somebody that has, because I see a lot of guests today, no one's asked questions, and that's okay. I think you've had so much rich information. Be sure that you get a hold of Omena. Do you do any kind of free initial consult for people that or do you just dive right in?
Well, what do you mean by initial free consult?
Well, if somebody just wants to ask you some questions, do you do a little 15-minute free consult or anything like that?
I can. I never say no to anything. I work with people who can't afford it. I ask them bake me a cake or something.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have an exchange of energy.
Absolutely. Because I agree with you.
With the email, they most certainly can email me.
Okay.
If they have any questions. I do this either over the phone, over the email. The person doesn't have to be in front of me. It's far more powerful if they're in front of me, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, I noticed in some of the work papers that you sent, or whoever had sent these to me, that you don't need much. You can tune right in.
Yes, I just need a first name and the relationship to that person.
Yep. Okay.
And if it's a boss, or if it's someone that's passed over, or if it's a brother, a sister, a husband, a lover, whatever.
Right.
I usually just need first names.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I can't thank you enough. It's been fascinating. You and I are on the same page, but you still have lots of great information. I always learn from guests, and I learned a tremendous amount today, and I hope those listeners who are in and tuned in have enjoyed this.